Good morning, everyone. Today I want to show you how to make a very simple, easy syrup with just 2 ingredients. Now in this day and age, the best kind of syrup would be maple syrup or honey. That'd be like the healthiest choice. But we know those are expensive, and if you have kids who like to eat pancakes, you will go broke buying that kind of syrup. The other option could be buying the cheap syrup that they have at the grocery store, but the main ingredient of those table syrups are corn syrup, and everybody knows that's just terrible for you. So this is my cheap and semi-healthy alternative. Now there's different spins you can put on this, different ways you can do it, but I'll start off with the basic plain syrup, and we can talk about some different things we can add to it to make it fancy. So to start off with, you get yourself a pot. I like to use a bigger pot than I need, because I tend to accidentally let things overflow, and that's no good. You want to put in 1.5 cups of sugar. Now if you just have white sugar, that'll work, but you're basically just making a plain sugar syrup, and honestly that's not going to be particularly healthy. I like to use unrefined cane sugar, and that gives it kind of its own flavor. It's not just plain sugar flavor. You can actually taste, you know, the extra goodies that are still in there. I just added 1 cup of water, so that's your basic ratio, 1.5 cups of sugar to 1 cup of water. And I'm going to turn on the heat and get a whisk, and I'm going to go ahead and mix this up. And what we want to do is bring it to a boil and let our syrup boil for 4 minutes. I've found other recipes that say they give you a shorter amount of time, but I have found that gives a very thin syrup, and that's just not good enough. We need a thicker syrup that we can pour onto our pancakes. So while we wait for this to boil, I'm going to talk about some other things you can add in to make some other delicious varieties. If you like fruity syrups, you can add strawberries, blueberries, you could add apples and cinnamon. You could add chopped pecans. There's a whole lot of ideas. I'll try to think of some more and put it in the description. Give like a list of things you can add in. I've done, all different kinds of fruits. That goes over well. The kids love that. And also I'm going to show you how I make chocolate syrup. That'll be what we do next after we finish this one. So when this gets to a boil and we finish this up, I'll show you how to make chocolate syrup. And the kids love that one too, and you can use it in place of Hershey syrup and make chocolate milk. So that's always really good. I give it a mix every once in a while, just until I'm sure the sugar is dissolved. And once it gets boiling, you can pretty much just let it alone for the 4 minutes and just let it do its thing. It's almost to a boil now. There it goes. You can see the simmer starting. I'm going to set my timer for 4 minutes. And I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit so it doesn't boil over, but we do want to keep it going at a rolling boil. Alright, we are nearing the end of our 4 minutes. The syrup has boiled down some. It's starting to get a little thicker. Now it's still going to seem pretty runny in the pan, but that's alright, because once you cool it, it will be thick like syrup, like you would want it to be. You can see it's kind of a golden brown color, just like any old syrup you buy from the store. And my timer is just about to ding. There we go. Okay, so we're going to shut off the heat. We're going to remove it from the heat. Now, at this point, this is where if you wanted to add some extracts or flavorings, this is where you would add it at the end here. Maybe give it about 5 minutes to cool off, and you could add extract of vanilla, you could add maple extract, almond extract, whatever flavor you like, you could add it in there. And if you added maple extract, then it would basically be like the cheaper maple flavored syrups you buy at the store, but without the nasty corn syrup in it. So that's a choice. Usually I just leave it plain. It tastes great the way it is. It has an interesting taste to it. It's not the same as plain sugar. It does have a flavor. As you can see, it's like a light brown color. So I can get a better look here. See how that looks? And it still has a lot of its minerals and vitamins and things in it, so it actually has a good flavor. So my kids like that one. they do also like the chocolate sauce. So we are going to get into that real shortly here. First, I'm going to need to dump that out into a container. And normally I would not just take it hot from the pan and pour it straight into my plastic container I've got over here, but I want to reuse this pot and save from dishes, so I'm going to do it. Now right now it's medium watery. It's not like completely watery, but it's not like thick syrup yet, as you can see. It will definitely thicken in the fridge though. You want to keep this stuff in the refrigerator, and it can last, I would recommend, maybe 2 weeks. It will start getting grainy after a while. The sugar will start to recrystallize at some point depending on the way you boiled it. I'm not an expert candy maker, but I know if you are boiling sugar, making candy, things like that, and if you scrape sugar crystals back down into it, it is more prone to crystallizing later on, so that probably has something to do with it. But I've left syrup in the fridge for more than a month, you know, in the back of the fridge, and I find it, and it's still perfectly fine. So you do your own research and make your own judgments. Now I'm going to move on to our delicious chocolate syrup. Now I'm going to start off again with 1.5 cups of the same unrefined cane sugar. And now I'm going to add cacao powder. And I just looked up how to pronounce it because I was not sure. I've been reading it all this time, but I never actually said it out loud. This is cacao powder, which is not to be confused with cocoa powder. Cocoa powder has been refined, and it is not nearly as good for you. Now you can use it. You can get regular old baking cocoa powder and put it in there, and that will make a delicious syrup too, and that's still better for you than anything you'll buy at the store. That's better for you than Hershey's syrup. But I would recommend, the best thing to find is raw organic cacao powder. Now I'll be honest, this particular brand, it doesn't actually say it's raw. I don't know how processed it is, but it is organic. You can see it has lots of fiber, magnesium, vitamin C, all kinds of goodies in there. And how much you want to put in, it just depends on how chocolatey you want it. I would say probably about 1/4 cup to maybe even up to 1/2 cup if you want. I just did 3/8 there. That seems like a reasonable amount. I'm not super big on measuring, so I don't always measure. Sometimes I just dump stuff in there. But as you can see, I've got cocoa powder and the sugar. Now, cocoa powder doesn't like to mix into water very well. If you've ever tried to mix it into water, you'll see that it doesn't like it. So I always mix this into the sugar first. That kind of breaks it up, and then it allows it to mix in better. So I'm going to put it back over here onto the burner I'm going to use, and I'm going to get my 1 cup of water. It's still the same measurements. Here we go, 1 cup of water. And we're going to mix this in and turn the heat back on. And the process is pretty much identical to making the plain syrup or the fruit syrup. You mix it up pretty good. You try and get all that sugar dissolved. You're going to bring it to a boil and boil it for 4 minutes. And you know, when you come up with your finished product, if you find that it's too runny for your like, after it's been in the fridge and cooled off all the way, if it's too runny, you can boil it a little longer. If it's too thick and you want it to be more pourable, then boil it a little less next time. Or add a little water to it, I suppose. You can probably get away with that too. So now I've just about got all the cocoa and the sugar mixed in. Now I just have to wait for it to heat back up. Alright, we've reached our boil. Now the thing about adding the cacao or cocoa powder to your syrup is it makes it more foamy when it boils. So you want to watch it a little extra closely for boiling over. Give it a little mix now and then to break up the bubbles, because it does tend to rise up pretty fast. But other than that, it's virtually the same process. We just hang out here, we let it boil, and it starts getting high, mix it down, and you kind of keep that up for approximately 4 minutes, depending on your desired consistency. Alright, our syrup is looking good, and we're down to our last few seconds before the timer beeps. Right about 4 minutes. Alright, we are going to remove this guy from the heat and let it cool off. Now this is the point where you would add some vanilla extract if you wanted to. Let's take a look here. This looks so good. I don't normally bother with adding vanilla just because vanilla is expensive, and I like being frugal, and honestly it tastes great and chocolatey, just exactly the way it is. You can use this to make chocolate milk, you can use this on your pancakes, you can use this in your coffee. I love to add some of this in my coffee, it's pretty great. Just like with the cane sugar syrup, it will crystallize on you after a couple of weeks. But you know, that's not a big deal. Usually I just let the kids, you know, take the chunky syrup and use it anyway. If you want it smooth, you could put it back in the pan and recook it. But it's not really a big deal. You can pour it into a squeezy bottle if you want it to be like Hershey's syrup. Like I said, after a while it'll start to crystallize, but for a while it'll pour out of there pretty good. It's looking great. I'm going to let this one cool off in the pan before I pour it in its container. And over here we have the sugar syrup. You can see it's a lovely golden brown color, and it's thickening. It's not as thick as it will be quite yet. I haven't put it in the fridge, but it will thicken up. And like I said, there are tons of goodies that you can add to the syrup, tons of flavors you can make. You're limited by your imagination, and this stuff is so much healthier for you than the junk you buy at the store. Not to mention, it's fast. This is done in 5 minutes and you have syrup. So there's no excuse. Anybody can do this. 5 minutes, boom, you got syrup. You got chocolate syrup. You got regular old plain pancake syrup. You can have strawberry syrup, blueberry syrup, any kind of syrup you feel like having. You can make it. So that about wraps up my syrup making session. Now I've got syrup to put in the fridge. Next time we make pancakes, we will have plenty of syrup to go on those. And I think I'm going to snag some of this chocolate syrup right now for my coffee. So that's it for today. I hope you found it helpful, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos. We got cooking and homesteading, homeschooling, and all kinds of other stuff. We're always up to something. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you soon.